So I'm making this video just to kind of show how my approach to the whole connecting to the receiver, video receiver, to your monitor and the rest of your setup using a Ethernet cable. So this is the setup that I had been using, or the receiver that I've been using. If we can focus on it, there we go. Standard one that comes with the quantum goggles. Nothing, it works, that's what I'll say about it. And I just have this adapter on the bottom that goes to an RJ45 plug. So the way this connects is actually super simple. Just snaps in there, and we just have our video and our power pass-throughs that just plug directly into this thing. I could have opened this up and attached the wires directly to the circuit board, made this much smaller, but I wanted to keep this in its original condition, just in case I did what I'm doing now and I'm swapping it out for something else, so I can still use this with all of standard connectors, or I could sell this or do whatever I want with it really, and it's still just in its original shape, and this can just get thrown away or kept around in case I ever decide to use this, so no real loss, something super simple. So the way that this works is just, once again, super simple. Wires just from each one, power wires here going into top of this RJ45 plug, and same with video. These plugs I grabbed on eBay. I mean, they were just kind of randomly sent to me. I ordered a miscellaneous pack of electronics and stuff, and they ended up sending me just a whole bunch of useless proprietary chips mostly, but a lot of random connectors, a couple USB connectors, and a whole bunch of these guys. They only have 4 pins on them. Not sure what these are used for in the real world, but 4 pins is all I need for this, so it works for me. So the way this whole setup works is actually still pretty simple. I have this big old mess that I made connects to the back of the controller. Basically it just has a LiPo on here, a standard XT60 plug, and then just a whole bunch of connections put together. I don't know if it's focusing on that. Basically video and power go into this RJ45 plug. Power also goes down into the controller just through a standard, I don't know what size that is, just a standard DC plug though. And then we also have a component out for additional monitors, and this is I don't know why I chose it, but it's a Molex plug, and it's what I use for all of my FPV monitors. I don't have a set of goggles, so I just use this. Just had a whole bunch of them lying around, and they're 4-pin, and they even have the right color coding on the wires, so that's what I'm using. Probably not the best choice, but I'll live with it. So what I'm doing is I'm just upgrading the receiver from that other one to, come on, focus, this 3D robotics one with diversity, just because I wanted to try out, try out some different antennas, see if I could get any advantages from a diversity receiver. But plugs on the bottom are different, and there are switches here instead of the buttons and the screen on the old one, which honestly I prefer better, but not the end of the world to have to deal with some switches. So I guess what I'll be doing is just sort of making a new one of these to fit this guy. Well, I guess sort of talking about or showing, focus, what it takes, or not really what it takes, but I guess just giving suggestions on, if you want to do it yourself, what you can do. So the first thing to do is just to gather up all the materials, which is really nothing for this. I like to keep all the stuff that I'm working on for my current projects just in these drawers for my shelf storage, or whatever, component drawers, so that way if I'm working on a project and then I get distracted or get another project or something, I can just shove this away in the rack, and then all the parts for the project stay in one place. So this is not really necessary, but habits. So I think the important thing is going to be to decide the pin out that you're going to want to use, because obviously crossing wires over, you don't want to feed your 12 volts straight into your video feed or down your ground wires or anything. So just drew up a little sticky note showing 4 pins on the plug and what they're all assigned to. It's nice, I just like to keep that kind of thing stuck to the bench in case I ever have moment where I forget what I'm doing, I can just kind of refer back to that so I don't screw anything up, and it really saves some time, you know, not having to flip through my phone or anything to look for a picture. So it's just handy to have around. So the first thing we're going to need to do is just shorten up these wires, because I want, like the last one was, the new one's going to be a little case that just clips onto the bottom of this guy. If you're building it, you can do whatever you want. You could open it up, you could solder directly to it. I'm just going to show how to get everything attached to that Ethernet plug. So I don't care about audio, so I'm not going to be using the audio component of this cable, just video. So really what I want to do now is just kind of snip everything down to a nice short length, and then we can start soldering things together. Alright, so I just finished trimming up these wires and stripping them and everything. Pretty simple, not much going on here, just video and ground on our video plug, of course, and positive and ground on our power plug. So we'll just start getting them connected to our connector here. Best to not forget to add heat shrink to the wires before soldering them, otherwise you're in for some desoldering. But not gonna forget that this time. So I'll just get these on here, and then we can get to soldering. So I've just got everything set up here at the soldering station. I'll just get to work kind of connecting everything. Since the heat shrink didn't work out so well, I'm just going to cover these connections in some liquid electrical tape, and that should insulate everything nicely. But before I do that, I just want to bend some pins out of the way just to give a little bit more space between some of these connections in case anything does happen. I don't anticipate this being moved around too much, so I'm not too worried about the connections breaking or shorting out, but it's always better to be safe than sorry with this kind of thing. There we go, so they're just spaced out a little bit. I'll just grab the liquid electrical tape now. So I love this stuff, but the main problem is the brush that comes with it is just too big for any standard applications. You know, it's massive. So I just like to use a toothpick, dip it into the bottle, get a good layer of it on there, and then just kind of cover everything with it. There we go. So this will insulate the connections, but it won't really protect them too much against bending. So once I get everything in place, I'm just going to cover it in a layer of hot glue, and that should keep everything in one spot for the duration of this thing's use. Just wait for this to dry, and while it's drying, it only takes about 10 or 15 minutes, but I'll whip up a design for a 3D printed case for all of this, so that way it'll just slide nicely onto the bottom of the receiver. So the printer finished. I've got the parts that I printed out that are going to be the enclosure for this whole mess. Come on, focus, there we go. So the bottom one here just has the pass-through holes for the two different plugs, and then a hole cut out so you can still select the channels, and then just a hole here and a little retaining piece for the RJ45 plug, and then just 3 bolt holes so that we can hold this top plate in place. I also countersunk some nut holes in the bottom. Come on, there we go. But unfortunately, when I was printing, it looks like we had a bit of a layer shift here where the flat part here ends and the rest of it begins, so those countersunk holes will not work out too well. But I've got a little trick to fix that, so I guess I'll show how to do that now. The first thing you'll need is just a long bolt that's the same size as the ones that you'll be using. So I'll be using M3 hardware. This is just a M3 by I think 40, and what you'll want to do is just thread it through your hole like that. Come on, stay focused. What are we doing? There we go. And then you'll just need a nut as well. So grab one of those. So you just want to, let's go, thread the nut as little as possible onto the end of the bolt, and then sort of pull it down to about where you want it to be. Now what you're going to do next is just hold your soldering iron or some sort of hot thing onto that nut while still pulling back on the bolt. This is why you want a long bolt, so you don't burn your fingers when everything heats up. So just give that a minute to heat up a bit. Obviously a bigger tip or a hotter temperature would speed up this process, but I did not think that far ahead. There we go. So looks like it's more flush with the surface now and in the right spot. Come on. There we go. So that's good, and once it cools down a little bit, you can just undo your bolt and move on to the next one. So I'll only do one of these on camera because it's a bit tough to hold in the right spot, but same thing goes on for the rest of them. Okay, so I've just got all three of those countersunk now, so they're all flush with the surface. These are kind of things that most people overlook when designing things, but they're just super simple little extrusions to add on. It takes almost no time, and it really just helps improve the fit and finish of the finished product, make things look a little bit better. I did the same thing with the top plate here, except I countersunk the bolt holes, so that way when it goes in, well, it'll get pulled in tighter, but those will be flush with the surface as well when that's finished. Now it's time to get everything mounted in the case, it looks like. So our liquid electrical tape has more or less dried on here, so this connection should be safe to play around with for a little bit. So I guess now we just get to see how or if all of this stuff fits in the case. Alright, so that's a pretty solid fit, not bad. Yeah, pretty perfect there. Power. So now let's just double check on here where our different plugs are. So power's going to go on this side and video's on this side. Alright, so that one's pretty much where it needs to be. Just get the video plug in place now. There we go. So that looks good. I guess now it's time for our first test fit of the receiver itself. Cool. Looks like that all lines up. So I guess now I'm just going to coat the inside of this box with some hot glue just to keep everything in place so that connections don't eventually pull these out and I have to take this whole thing apart again. And then from there I'd say it's ready to try out. One good idea before sealing everything in the box is just to make sure that all the connections are right. So I'm just going to hook this up to the controller where everything's already hooked up and just test the continuity across the different wires to make sure everything's going on properly. So just be, come on, there we go. So we'll just be testing across the small X plug that goes into the monitor, and then across just the different poles of the plug here. Let's just put our multimeter on continuity mode. Seems to be working. So first is power. So that's good. Neutral, also good. Video neutral, perfect. And video feed will be one of these guys, that one. So, looks like everything's wired up properly, so I can just kind of fill this with some hot glue now, and should be ready to go. So the main place I'm worried about on here is this RJ45 jack. It's really only locked in for pushing against it. When I pull a plug out of it, it'll still slide forward, so I just want to get that coated up. I originally intended to add a bit on the inside of the top plate here that would bump up against these pins. Where are they? It's like sort of plastic studs on the connector, so that way I wouldn't be able to pull out, but I completely forgot when I was designing the case, so they're not there. I really like using hot glue with 3D printed things because it melts the plastic a little bit and really gets a nice bond to everything. It's even the smallest amount. Well, I guess not the smallest amount, but even a small amount will do when holding these kinds of things in place. So there we go. Just want to scrape this off. There, so I'll just let that cool down and then test fit the cap. By test fit, I mean actually fit. It's a little bit too late to test that out. So the glue is mostly cool now. All these connections feel pretty secure. So I'm going to go ahead and fit on the lid and see how that goes. Screw that. There we go. Everything's in place. Lid's held on nice and tight. A little bit of a gap here, I think from the hot glue, but I'm not too concerned about it. So I'll just make sure this fits still. Looks good. I guess it's time to try it out with the whole system now. So I'm just going to slap some antennas on here, because it's not the best idea to run these things without antennas on them. Get it all wired up. Blue lights are the first good sign. Now we'll plug in our screen and see what goes on there. So static and no signal, which is to be expected. I guess I'll plug a battery into my quad and see if we can get any video out of that. Hey, there we go. So, still have video feed from the quad, or currently disassembled quad, but I guess it just goes to show it works. So, there you go. I guess that's how you do it, or how I do it at least. So, hopefully I was able to help someone out with any of this information. But yeah, one of the things just to look at is just kind of the simple things that make such an easy, simple thing to make just kind of look a little bit nicer, you know, like those countersunk bolts and countersunk nuts, and just kind of trying to get, you know, take advantage of what you're working with, just to make sure you're kind of think through the whole thing before you just go ahead and design it. So obviously probably not the best design, but you know, it works, takes everything into account, can still adjust the channels. A little bit more difficult because of just the lip, but put a chamfer on it, so that way you can get your finger in there more easily, because otherwise it would be pretty tough. But other than that, fairly simple.